Hi, boys and girls. I hope you've had a great rainy week and maybe got to hear some thunder or see some lightning if it came to your house. It was very exciting to get lots of rain here at my house. So, last week we learned about Joseph and his brothers and the coat of many colors. I hope you got to make one for yourself. And about how his brothers became very jealous of Joseph. And we learned about that word jealousy, how we envy someone and want something that they have. And Miss Kayla gave us a story that helped us to relate to Joseph and his brothers and how they felt by telling us about her stories of her and her kiddos outside, and they're outside having fun playing. And they come inside and they're hot and tired, maybe dusty, a little thirsty. And we come inside and she only gives a popsicle to Liv. And how would we feel if only Liv got a popsicle and no one else did? So that got me to thinking about the word favor, which is going to pop up in more of Joseph's story today. And the word favor means that you approve of somebody and you like somebody and you trust somebody very, very much. And that got me to thinking, what could I do to maybe earn some favor with Miss Kayla to get a popsicle? So we're going to start off with a game today. I'm going to show you a picture and you shout out to whoever's at home what you think that picture is of. Okay, so I'll show you a picture and then I'll show you the actual object. All right, you ready? So my first picture looks like this. Shout out what you think those might be. Think you got it? That was, drum roll please, the bristles on your toothbrush, what you use to wash your teeth every night. All right, next one. Ready? My next picture looks like this. I see something kind of sparkly, maybe. Go ahead, shout out what you think that might be. That is my little coin purse here. Very shiny, right? All right, and here's my last picture. Hope it's a little tricky for you. Ready? This is my last picture. Shout out what you think it might be. What do you see? That is this. And this is something called a geode. And it's a regular old rock on the outside, but when you break it open on the inside, it's beautiful and shiny and sparkly. So was it kind of hard to figure out what those objects were when I held up these close-up pictures of them? Probably, right? So sometimes it's hard to tell what something is when we're really close to it. But God sees the big picture, and He can always make sense of things, but sometimes it's hard for us to understand it. So through Joseph's story, we can remember that God sees the big picture and has a plan for each of us. So last week, Kayla left us with a cliffhanger. Joseph had been thrown into the pit by his brothers, and at this time, they debated on whether or not they were going to kill him. But his brothers saw an opportunity to make some money. They saw some Midianite traders coming down the road, and they sold Joseph as a slave to them, for 20 pieces of shekel. So they sold him out to be a slave for some money. But the Lord continued to be with Joseph. So Joseph was taken to Egypt, and he was sold to an Egyptian man named Potiphar. Now, Potiphar was the captain of Pharaoh's, the captain of the guard, so he was in charge of all of Pharaoh's soldiers. Potiphar liked Joseph very, very much, and Joseph found favor in Potiphar's eyes. And so Potiphar put Joseph in charge of his entire house. God made Joseph very successful while he was in Egypt. And the Bible tells us in Genesis 39:5 that from that time that the Lord made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in house and field. So just because Joseph was in Potiphar's house, God blessed that house and made Joseph's life better, even though he probably couldn't see where we were going. It makes you wonder about Joseph's character. And do you think that if Joseph had been whining or complaining or refusing to do his work, that he would have found favor with Potiphar? Probably not. You wouldn't want someone like that in charge of your whole house. So it sounds like Joseph was becoming a hard worker. Potiphar's wife, however, had other plans. She told a lie about Joseph that made Potiphar very, very angry. And the hardest thing, Joseph didn't do what she said he did, but he was sent to prison anyway. But the Lord stayed with Joseph. Even in prison, he found favor in the jailer's eyes, and the jailer trusted Joseph so much that he put Joseph in charge of the whole prison. So he put him in charge of the prison and the other prisoners and the day-to-day operations. And he was trusted and he was taken care of. Now, around this time, Pharaoh becomes very angry with his cupbearer and his baker. So the cupbearer's job was the person who would taste the king's drink to make sure that there was no poison in it. And the baker's job was to bake. So we don't know why Pharaoh got mad with these two men, but we know he did, and he threw them into prison. So while they were in prison, these two men had dreams. And Joseph was able to tell them what their dreams meant. So pause the video and get your family together. And please read Genesis 40, 8 through 13, and 16 through 18 to find out what happened in these dreams and what these dreams meant. I'll give you a minute to do that. So what ended up happening in those dreams? What were those dreams about? What did the cupbearer dream? What did the baker dream? So the cupbearer, after Joseph interpreted these dreams for them, told them what it meant, the cupbearer lived and he went back to work for Pharaoh, and the baker was put to death. Joseph had asked the cupbearer to remember him and asked for his help in getting out of prison. But the cupbearer forgot, and Joseph had to stay in prison for another 2 years. 2 more years he had to stay in prison. That's such a bummer. So Joseph sure is going through a lot right now, isn't he? He's having a lot of bad times and bad luck, and he's having to wait. So does this remind you what we're having to do right now? We're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting. But Joseph's story is a reminder that even while we're waiting and feeling forgotten by God, that God is still working and he's always with us, whether we see him or not. So Joseph was going through a period of suffering right now, but God placed him as favorable with his Egyptian masters. It could have been much, much worse for him when he went to Egypt. But God has a plan for him, as you'll find out next week. Okay, so we're going to make Joseph in prison this week. So you'll start out with your piece of paper. You can draw Joseph on it, or I drew my Joseph on a separate piece of paper, colored him, cut him out, and glued him. You'll need a hole punch and a ruler. I spaced my holes apart about 1 inch, and I was able to get 8 holes on the top. You can see my dimensions here, and about 8 holes on the bottom. You'll also need your yarn or your thread to make the prison bars. And just like a lace-up card that you might have at home or have seen at school before, you will pull the thread up under, and then you'll go over to the top and pull it through just like that. And you'll repeat that all the way across until you've got the bars of his prison. So towards the end you'll have something that looks like this. And there you have it, Joseph in prison. Remember that God is always with us, and he has wonderful plans for each and every one of us. I hope you have a wonderful week, guys. Bye, kids.